Soul King Brook is someone so integral to the dawn of the world that fate had to rip him straight from another time in order to meet our Monkey D. Captain. And not even Gold D. Roger got that kind of special treatment from fate. To him, fate just said cheers and terminated his contract with life. And fair enough, because it's no good having drums of liberation without a skilled musician to play them. Brook is underappreciated, underexplored, and mostly remembered through his obsession with undergarments. But Brook is like an amalgamation of all of the Straw Hats. The optimism of Luffy, the wisdom of Jinbei, the perverted chivalry of Sanji, the sword skills of Zoro, the cowardice of Usopp, Chopper's naivety, and even Robin's knowledge of history, not so much because he studied it, but because he lived it. And it's very appropriate that this personification of every Straw Hat comes together in a literal skull, just like their Jolly Roger. You could even say that Brook is the backbone of the crew, etc. Since the very beginning of One Piece, Luffy has been gunning for a musician. In the early days, his two highest priorities were a cook and a musician. These come before the arguably more essential roles of, say, navigator and doctor. And to this day, Sanji is the only person Luffy has ever admitted that he would not be able to become the Pirate King without, because Sanji is his precious cook. And he would 100% say the same thing to Brook, because in Luffy's mind, they're equally important. In fact, a musician may even be more important. There's a great moment at the end of Arlong Park where Zoro's wounds are being treated and Luffy says, "A doctor? Yeah, that would be nice. But a musician should come first, right?" Why a musician? Well, pirates sing, don't they? Because that's Luffy's experience of pirates from Shanks and his crew. To Luffy, pirates and music are inseparable. But this isn't just a gag. In the real-world history of piracy, musicians were often considered the most prized members of the ship because real-world piracy isn't quite as fun and exciting as One Piece. There's a lot less light adventure and a lot more boredom, significantly less shower scenes, and a lot of dying of assorted diseases. So musicians were every bit as important as the ship's doctor to maintain the well-being of the crew. And in a way, Luffy is the only one who sees the true value of having a musician aboard his ship, although it's not something that he consciously considers. But Luffy and Brook have been a perfect match ever since they laid all two of their collective eyes on each other in chapter 442. For Luffy, this was love at first sight, and for Brook, this was his soulmate. And there is this extremely underrated panel in Brook's introductory chapter. Most people remember the big 2-page spread at the end where Luffy asked Brook to join the crew, but very few people remember where Luffy actually made that decision. It happens in this set of 3 panels. The ghost ship appears with Brook singing, and he's sandwiched by Luffy and Nami. Nami being utterly terrified because she's seeing a singing skeleton in a spooky environment, and Oda chose Nami very specifically because she's an audience grounding character. Generally, whatever Nami feels is what we're meant to feel, because she's the normal, mostly well-adjusted and intelligent person in every scenario. So using her as grounding informs us as to what Luffy's feeling, or at least it gives us the illusion that we think we know what he's feeling. But with Luffy on the other side, he's in shock, but for a completely different reason. This facial expression is so subtle, but he's in awe of Brook, and it's in this panel that he decides to ask Brook to join the crew. Hence, when we do finally get to the 2 pages, Luffy says, "Never mind all that, do you want to join my crew?" And without any hesitation, Brook says, "Yeah, alright." Although before asking Brook to join, Luffy's most pressing question is whether or not skeletons poop. And just to further prove that Brook and Luffy are perfect, Brook answers him immediately. They're on the same mental wavelength. Because Brook isn't humoring Luffy, he doesn't see this as at all a strange question to ask. This is a perfectly normal conversation that 2 people are having within their own world. And in general, everything about Brook is so simple and easy. Just like Luffy, and that's what I love about him. This ease can be a bit of an issue though, because this has never happened in the history of the Straw Hat Pirates. Almost everyone rejects Luffy's initial offer and he has to really struggle to convince them. Probably the closest thing we have to another yes was Jinbei, who said, "Yeah, but like maybe later?" Which is the equivalent of telling a friend, "Yeah, we should definitely catch up later. I'll contact you on the internet to arrange something." But this ease is why I think Brook can feel a bit underappreciated, especially since he joined after the Water 7 saga, which was the greatest crew struggle we've ever had. During this saga, we had to fight hard for Robin, Usopp, and Frankie. None of them were easy, and we went on a very long and difficult journey for them. And then immediately after, Brook was just plonked straight in our laps. We didn't have to convince him, we didn't have to fight for him, and I think that leads to a sense of devaluation. For example, and just stay with me here, in theater, the best way to fill seats for a show that isn't selling particularly well is never to give tickets away for free. Never. Discount them down to a minuscule price, but never for free. Because if you give people something for free, then they tend to value it a lot less. There was no cost to pay, so it makes them much less likely to go out and actually see the show because they have no personal investment in it. And with Brook, we did get that investment during Thriller Bark, but still, he didn't come with the same sort of legacy that everyone else did. We did not have to pay anywhere near the same cost for Brook. So I think it takes a long time to truly appreciate his position on the crew, and I mean a long time. Say during Wano sort of long time. Because Luffy's long-term investment in music is starting to pay some serious dividends with this whole sun god business. Luffy's heartbeat are the drums of liberation, and Brook is standing right there to back him up with any orchestral needs or just a jam in general. That's what music people do, right? They jam. I don't know, I am not a music. But like Luffy and the Straw Hats, the Rumba Pirates were a different kind of pirate. They wanted nothing to do with all of the looting and pillaging and such. They were a group of people who wanted to be free enough to travel the world, play music everywhere they go, and generally bring joy to those around them. Even on his deathbed, Calico Yorkie's last words were, "Now don't sound so hopeless, men. We're the Rumba Pirates, remember? We bring smiles to kids' faces." He said this as he was in excruciating pain, which also informed Brook's philosophy going forward. No matter how bad things got, no matter how excruciating the physical or mental pain, the mission was always to smile. Even when all of his crew were dying one by one, they decided to play and smile until death took them. They died on their own terms. And then even after death, Brook, stranded on his own for half a century, never stopped trying to smile. And there's a great sequence of his flashback 10 years into his resurrection, where he's jumping and rolling around the ship, exclaiming how fun it is to be alone. He even takes off his pants and pretends to be embarrassed, oh my. But then it's all a clever ruse. He didn't actually take off his pants, he just said that. And then went, lol, got you, to no one, but it was very fun, I'm sure. There isn't a single situation in life where Brook has succumbed to despair, which is something that Luffy can't even say because he was shattered after Ace's death, and it really took Jinbei to drag him out of that. So if anyone truly deserves the title of Joy Boy, it's Brook, which by the way is exactly what you need in a musician. Going back to real world piracy, if the morale of the musician is broken, then you are truly screwed. But also on some very deep level, Brook gets Luffy in a way that no other Straw Hat does. Despite him being the person to have spent the least amount of time with Luffy. Even Jinbei spent more time with Luffy during the last saga of pre-time skip, because Brook was only with the crew for like a week before he got popped away by Kuma. And what did Brook do? He made the best of a bad situation by casually stumbling his way into becoming a global rock star. He truly is his very own Joy Boy. Sure, he's had tragedy, but these days he's always smiling, or at least smiling as best he can without lips. You cannot break Brook's spirit. Nothing can. That's why when Oda had to draw all of the good and bad timeline Brook variants, they all turned out exactly the same, because Brook is a multiversal constant. He is unwaveringly optimistic and will always reach his full potential, even in the universe filled with the most tragedy and hardship. That's the thing about Brook. He just gets the job done. He never complains, he never questions decisions, he just gets the information and completes the task, no matter how impossible it may seem. This is the man that you can trust to 1v1 an Emperor of the Sea and not only survive, but come out of that conflict with 3 poneglyph rubbings and the ability to brag about having slept with said Emperor, which I guess it is literally what he did. But the same goes for every Brook action. Half of the crew has been turned into modern art, not a problem. Brook, even under that same spell, is gonna fix the situation for everyone. Or say we need to smash Mother Carmel's picture or we're all dead, no worries, Brook's got it. As a reader, Brook is the Straw Hat I trust the most, because everyone else is gonna find a way to screw up the mission. Zoro's gonna get lost, Sanji will get distracted by women, Luffy is, well, he's Luffy, but Brook, he's just gonna go and do the thing. And even with that in mind, somehow Brook seems to carry less value, which I think comes down to shonen value. Brook probably gets underappreciated because he doesn't really get the standard Straw Hat 1v1s. The only one he's had was with Zio on Fishman Island. Punk Hazard didn't give him much to do, he wasn't present for Dressrosa. Zoe had no fighting to do unless you were an elephant. Whole Cake Island was a very non-typical mega arc. And on Wano, he did get a great moment alongside Wano, defeating the Number and her gaggle. But Brook doesn't really have his defining shonen moment. He doesn't have his equivalent of Zoro versus Mr. One, which is something that even characters like Nami and Usopp have because of their, I guess, ironic seniority within the crew. And it's a shame, because he actually has some of the most interesting abilities of all crew members, because the dude can literally summon the chilling winds of the underworld. Oh, and of course, he has an afro, which Long Ring Longland established is simply overpowered. But he is genuinely powerful. I mean, he one-shot a Number on Onigashima. But then again, Brook is, he's a non-standard shonen currency, and that's fine. Everything Brook accomplishes, he does because someone or something else is acting as a distraction. He's a very precise surgical instrument that, when given the opportunity, can do anything. But he's not the kind of guy to burst into a room and just, start punching. He very much operates in the background. But then again, he's also the perfect middleman man in terms of strength. Brook isn't so powerful that strength becomes his primary narrative focus, but he's also not so weak to the point where Oda has to find ways to keep him out of higher level conflicts. He's this really great gap filler. You can jam Brook in anywhere and he just works, which includes crew dynamics as well. At 90 years old, Brook is by far the oldest Straw Hat, so he's capable of having mature interactions with the crew elders like Robin and Jinbei, but he's also capable of wacky hijinks with the kids. Brook is very much like the cool grandfather. And we know that Brook and Luffy are already a perfect fit, but Brook also works well with Zoro because they're both swordsmen. Further than that though, like say on Thriller Bark where Zoro visits the grave of the Rumba Pirates that Frankie built, the reason why Frankie built that being that they simply could not store all of the bones on the Thousand Sunny. There were too many. But Zoro brings Yubashiri, the sword that got destroyed on Enisobi, and he asks Brook if it would be okay for his dead sword to rest here as well. Quite the touching moment between swords people. But Brook also naturally goes with Sanji because they're both perverts. Usopp and Chopper also work well because the three of them have that over-the-top comical feel. And with Chopper, Brook is probably the only Straw Hat that he never has to worry about because, well, he's already dead. There's nothing Chopper can do to fix that. Then with Frankie, they're both weird physical specimens that greatly enjoy music, but Brook also has a fun dynamic with Robin. When the crew first met Brook, there are only two people who weren't terrified, Luffy and Robin. Robin had a completely neutral expression when she first met Brook, and I think that plays into her fascination with morbid things. It's not even really a fascination, it's just that she sees the world through a different lens. And actually, she doesn't react at all to Brook asking to see her panties. But of course, on the topic of panties, that's probably, the one little stain on Brook's name. One of the many reasons why Thriller Bark gets a bit tricky is because it features the pervert trio of Sanji, Absalom, and Brook. Now, to be fair, Brook is definitely the least annoying of the three. His panty gimmick doesn't happen as often, and it does, weirdly, ultimately have a payoff very far down the line when he uses the gag to distract Big Mom for a fraction of a second, just enough time to bisect Zeus and save the entire crew on Whole Cake Island. Whereas I don't think Sanji's pervert gimmick has ever really been a benefit. It's almost always been a detriment, especially in the nose-bleeding days. And he also has a much wider arsenal of pervert behavior. Whereas for Brook, it's just one specific gag that comes out rarely. Sort of like how he runs on water, Brook manages to straddle this balance while Sanji drowns. There is an interesting argument to be made with Brook, which is that he was given the panty gag on purpose, as a way of showing how out of touch he is with the modern world. Sort of like how back in the old days, everyone would give their secretary a pat on the butt to say good job or whatever. But I personally don't believe that. I think that this gag was given to Brook because Eiichiro Oda is himself a bit of a pervert, and it has no greater purpose than that. It's not some big social commentary. But even then, this is the worst thing that Brook has ever done. Compare that to, say, Usopp leaving the crew, Sanji leaving the crew, and even that one time where Luffy bet the lives of the entire crew on a Davy backfight with Foxy. Although speaking of Davy backfights, I know this isn't canon, but in the Adventure of Nebulandia special, Brook implied that he and the Rumba Pirates once participated in a Davy backfight. Again, not canon, but there is still so much canon information about Brook's history that we don't know. When introducing himself officially to the crew, he lays out his history as a leader of a battle convoy in a certain kingdom. So Brook has an entire section of his life that we know next to nothing about. And there are various puzzle pieces that lead us to speculate that this certain kingdom was the Toroa Kingdom in West Blue, an island famous for producing high-quality musicians, one of which was even being sold as a slave on Sabadi. His name is Byron, and he was dressed in a very similar style to Brook, as well as half of the Rumba Pirates. I mean, the other half were dressed as cowboys, which is an entirely different thing. But in addition to his hidden past, Brook also has an exceptional role to play in the future. Brook isn't just here as support. Every crew member has an integral role. So imagine the crew getting to Laugh Tale, with Robin reading the final text to guide the crew to the One Piece, and it just says in perfect ancientese, "Play Bink Sake, lol," which is not at all out of the question because Bink Sake is a song that transcends time. The Rumba Pirates played it, the Roger Pirates sang it, the Red Hair Pirates, they couldn't get enough of it, and eventually the song was passed all the way down to Luffy. Perhaps even a message that was passed all the way down from the Void Century. In fact, the final line of the song contains the phrase Warai Banashi, which means funny tale, and happens to be the line that Roger quoted immediately before naming the final island Laugh Tale. And in a way, this would be really fun, because even if Blackbeard got to Laugh Tale first, then he'd be screwed because his crew doesn't have a musician. So the fate of the entire world could very much come down to a single skeleton. And this is why Brook left his superstar music career, a lifestyle of being able to play music to endless amounts of people, because on some level, he knows that the music he plays with Luffy is going to have a much greater impact on the planet.